Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and a bit of a late start tonight. It is 11:33, May 12th. Wow. Okay. Good starting time. Heavy-duty numbers there. Now, sometimes when I sit down, I have a very deliberate idea about what I want to talk about. Self-possession's a good example. The womb inseminated by Solomon is a good example. And at other times, I talk about things that are sparked in me by comments and emails and things like this. And I get a lot of correspondence now, and it's very nice. I really, really enjoy it. If you listen to the podcast and you have a question or you want to talk to me, just reach out. I'm very approachable. This is still a podcast with under 500 or 600 viewers and listeners between Substack, YouTube, and Spotify. And for the most part, I really enjoy the people I've met. I haven't had any negative experiences yet. Some of the people I've interacted with have given me an opportunity to be of really direct service to the people. Some people have been in a state of distress and quite frankly, very, very profound paranormal attacks. And it's very gratifying to be able to help people like that. I don't know what this is I'm doing. Probably when the human race comes out of the consciousness black box they've been put in, and in this particular utility of that expression, I mean the advent of psychology and psychiatry and pharmacia geared toward the brain, but principally the paradigm of observing human behavior from the outside through the lens of what I consider to be a very compromised and a very crippled modality of engaging consciousness. Positive and a negative root at its beginning, the positive being Carl Jung and the negative being Sigmund Freud. And I guess what I'm able to do now is completely uncertified. I have no license to do these things. No title. I'm not coming out of any school. But nonetheless, I'm able to dispel a lot of this negativity in people. And I would suggest that what I'm doing is the forerunner of what's going to replace, in great measure, psychiatry and psychology. Because I'm just a few steps ahead of the group being all of us and how society perceives reality. Everybody's going to catch up. Absolutely nothing special about me, aside from the interests and the curiosities that have defined my life and what I have derived from those interests and curiosities, my understanding of consciousness, and especially that aspect of consciousness in which people are assaulted with thought streams they can't control, and in many instances, paranormal activity. It's tremendously gratifying to be able to help people. And like I said, the world we're going into, if I'm right, there's a margin of error, and it's not in whether I'm right or not, it's about whether we make the bell curve. There's some people out there saying we're not going to make the bell curve. My neighbor across the mountain, Shunyamurti of Sat Yoga, it's all over according to him. The only goal is self-realization to transcend the chaos of the afterlife. And nothing can turn the world around. And it is slated for the destruction prescribed in the many prophecies that he has studied, including the Book of Revelation. I disagree with this assessment. I don't think that the world is ending. I could be wrong. I could be overly optimistic. It's possible. But whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong is irrelevant at this point. All that really matters now is how you live and how you use the energy fields we're living in to rise up and ride them. Surf them, if you will. The reason that I do not think that it's ending is because I see evidence of people who are well-rooted for the world to come, which would involve a rejection of the world that is, which was beautifully exemplified in the life choices that Cormac McCarthy made, and his decision to live his life on his terms and to share himself with us, unmolested by the norms of the publishing industry, unmolested by a love of money, unmolested by what people thought of him. That's an example. So if the world was ending, I don't think the well-rooted people would be blooming. The opportunity bank, the inspiration bank, the directional winds, which come from the astral and the causal, would not be functioning if the world was ending. As my neighbor across the mountain, Shunyamurti, is telling his students and his 100,000 plus YouTube subscribers. I would also point out that irregardless of whether the world is ending or not, his prescription for living is valid and good. He advocates an inwardly directed life. He advocates meditation. He advocates the annihilation of the ego and having the courage to live from the true self. And so it's largely a very positive message and very much in keeping with this type of messenger. However, on this one point of the world ending, specifically by fire, he says, I don't think so. Now, getting back to the comments and the questions I get, I notice misunderstandings, which are inevitable, because the things that I speak about pivot off of realizations. A realization cannot be faked. You have either had it or you have not. In the world of certification, there are a number of micro trials, the aggregate of which is the overall trial for certification. If you survive 7 to 9 years of academe, you may become a licensed medical doctor, a psychiatrist. You can then prescribe pharmacia. You can counsel people. But these certifications are not predicated on transformative realizations within oneself. There are perceptual changes and mental growth in these various certification processes, but they in and of themselves do not possess the capability of delivering a realization. A realization, a profound one, is an initiatic experience. The ancient world used to talk about initiatic experiences as a matter of life and a matter of course. There was nothing esoteric about it. It was out in the open. Ancient Greeks would have known that Pythagoras was an initiate, had been initiated into the mysteries. One of the great initiation stories I heard was of the African Sangoma, Credo Mutwa, who was interviewed by David Icke and who was a valid voice for the astral, very astrally lucid, confirmed and expanded upon all of Icke's theories about the Greys and the reptilians. And to acquire this information, he had to go through the rites of initiation with a number of shamanic systems in Africa. Fascinating individual. I'm going to give you the simplest possible definition that I can give you of what an initiation is. And I'm going to explain to you why no amount of study or mental preparation can fabricate or become a facsimile of initiation. Have you ever wondered why, when we're born and until a certain age, we are considered innocent? Have you ever wondered about that? What makes a person innocent? An example of a reverse initiation would be a true remembering of the innocence of childhood. But it's almost impossible. You can relive it in meditative states. I went through a period up here, the year I lived alone, where I had a number of memories come back to me that I had not remembered in 45 years. Vivid, clear memories, and the heart of the experiencer was brought to me. You see, memory operates at an emotional frequency. So to truly remember your childhood, to truly remember being 7 years old, you have to first feel like a 7-year-old. The reason that meditation and trance states, which would be somewhere between waking and sleeping, not the same as the waking state and not the same as the sleeping state, nor is it a hypnotic state. The meditative state is something unique. In these states, you can get so clear and so clean that the memory of 7 years old can come to you and enter you, not because you remember what it feels like to be 7 years old, because in the state you've achieved, in a meditative state, there's nothing impeding the 7-year-old feeling from coming in. Your traumas are abated in the state. Any blocks you have to that level of innocence coming into you have been removed. It's really quite something. I've had about a dozen or so up here on the mountain. Not so much since I got married. My wife keeps me here, loaded with responsibilities for the family. But the first year I lived alone, I was having them once a month or so. And they would be, it got to a point where I could have them just walking around. I didn't even have to be in a trance state, in a meditative state. Now, there's a reason I asked you to remember innocence. which most of you, if not all of you, will not be able to do. But you will understand the comparison I'm going to make and the example of what an initiatic process is, because you now live in the age of experience. The opposite of innocence is experience. William Blake got it right. Songs of Innocence and Experience. Now I want you to imagine two boys, two brothers. One is 14 and one is 8. The 8-year-old, from the time of about 6, correlating to the brother being 12, observed from the position of innocence a massive transformation his brother went through. His brother started to change and then eventually disappeared, and somebody else appeared. Now, from the perspective of innocence, it truly seems like a disappearance. Can you guess what the line is where innocence ends? Innocence ends where you want something. It's not that children don't want things. They want cookies, they want chocolate, they want you to put the cartoon on, they want you to spend time with them, they want things, but these aren't deep, deep wants. But once you go through puberty, you forfeit your innocence because you have a need so deep in your biology that you can never return to innocence, which is the state of not wanting anything. You want to procreate. Nature has dictated that through the biology and through the consciousness that arrives through the biology, through the body. We could call this, in the Sufi model of 7 souls, we could call this the physical soul, the consciousness, the object consciousness defined by the body. And to produce a life is to pay life back for giving you life. I'm not going to say it's a sin not to procreate. It isn't. And we live many times. So maybe in a recent past life you had 14 kids on a rural farm in the Azores Islands of Portugal. Maybe you get 1 or 2 lives off from procreating. But as a general rule, to equitize your life and to return the gift, you create life. Now I want you to go back to that 8-year-old and 14-year-old. I want you to imagine a conversation between the two of them. The 8-year-old brother says to his 14-year-old brother, "What happened to you? Where did you go? Why are you such an asshole? What have you done with my brother?" The 14-year-old, looking at his 8-year-old brother, who was born when he was 4 years old, whom he loves, who he passed 7 or 8 years of innocence with before puberty began. So they shared that innocence. The 14-year-old, who is now beyond the age of innocence and is now manifesting his experiences, magnetizing his experiences, looks at this brother whom he loves dearly, still in a state of innocence. And what might the 14-year-old say to the 8-year-old? Would he not say something like, "Little brother, you'll know soon enough, just wait till it happens to you"? Because there is no way the 14-year-old can explain to the 8-year-old what the initiatic experience of puberty is. The 8-year-old doesn't even have the consciousness to receive the information. You will be attracted to girls. You will start to think about girls incessantly. They're both heterosexual in my example. No prejudice intended towards homosexuals. And the 8-year-old says, "Girls? What do you mean, girls? We used to go down to the creek and fish. We used to ride our bikes for all day on Saturdays. What do you mean, girls?" And the 14-year-old lovingly looks at the 8-year-old and says, "I can't possibly explain it to you. You're going to have to wait till you go through what I call," the 14-year-old brother would not use this terminology, "the initiatory experience." You have to be biologically initiated by puberty to understand the new consciousness of want and need. You cannot explain the loss of innocence to somebody still in innocence, because the loss of innocence is an initiatic experience. Welcome back. I just took myself a little break. Went and got a thermos of coffee. And I really like the initial setup of this podcast. Now, for those of you who have been around since the beginning, the early podcasts I stumbled through, you may recall a podcast called A Simple Ghost Story. It is not on Substack. It's on YouTube. YouTube is also called the Talamanca Review. It took me a while to find this unified platform, which I like. I have a number of people who listen to me while they work, and they enjoy the Spotify downloads, just the audio file, and they put earbuds in and they work construction and they listen to me. Now, A Simple Ghost Story, I will go over very, very quickly. But you got to listen to the 1 hour treatment, because it is one of the best ghost stories you'll ever hear. It really happened. Like 37 years ago. In my ghost story, I go to a remote location, an island. And I'm not making this up. This all really happened. Go listen to the podcast for all the details. I went with my girlfriend at the time. It was her family's cottage. In a moment alone, I penned a poem. At the end of that poem, I wrote the line, "I am the wind." A further action in this solitude in which my girlfriend napped at the cottage had me rummaging through the bookshelf to find a registry of visitors in which notes and salutations and thank yous would be written. It went back decades. The cottage had been in the family since about 1901. It was originally built by a Superior Court judge and his wife, and handed down to my girlfriend's father. Subsequent to that, my girlfriend the next day in this 3-day stay at the cottage alone had an encounter at night down at the end of the dock in which she felt she was being watched. When I went through the registry, I came across a memoriam to somebody who had died, and the last line of the memoriam, which had been clipped from the Toronto Star and which had been written for a 17-year-old boy who had died by accident, was the same line I finished with, "I am the wind." And this was the only piece of paper stapled into the cottage registry. And on the other side of the two-sided book was a long missive written by my girlfriend's father to his own son who had died at the age of 17. And this obituary in the Toronto Star was written by another man who had also lost a 17-year-old son on the same day my girlfriend's father lost his 17-year-old stepson. He was brought into the family at 14 in the foster care program, died in a car accident. Now, when my girlfriend was at the end of the dock, she became convinced that she was being observed by this stepbrother who had been dead. The last night we stayed in the cottage, we both woke up at the same millisecond, which was the crack of dawn. Dawn, by the way, just as the sun is rising, is very often when you'll rise if you're meant to remember a dream and if you have been contacted by the other side. I've never done any research into this. I don't know why that is, why dawn, crack of dawn. So you can still, it's right at that moment where you can still see stars and the first kiss of sunlight coming up the other side of the world. That exact moment, it doesn't last long. And coincidentally, that's been happening to me quite a bit last week or so. I've been waking up right at dawn with these very powerful dreams. We drove home, and I convinced myself that I was meant to give the poem I wrote to my girlfriend's father. I don't know what possessed me to do this. He immediately recognized the last line. And my girlfriend and I, we had agreed not to tell anybody this story because we didn't think anybody would believe us. The dream we both had was him. We didn't have the same dream, but it was the same psychic fingerprint, same spirit fingerprint, same astral fingerprint. It was him. My girlfriend's dream expressed itself a certain way. My dream expressed itself a certain way. When we got home, I gave him the poem. And there was a gathering at the house. It was a Sunday night. They pushed all family events to the subsequent Sunday. If your birthday fell on a Wednesday, it was celebrated the following Sunday. That was the tradition in my girlfriend's family. We had no idea what was being celebrated. My girlfriend felt a bit guilty. What did she forget? Turns out it was Father's Day, which generally does fall on a Sunday. And so here I was giving this guy a poem with this last line he recognized, making him remember his dead stepson on Father's Day. My girlfriend comes into the kitchen through the push door. Everybody's out in the dining room having an aperitif. They liked a little bit of alcohol, this family. They were Irish. Both the parents were psychiatrists. My girlfriend immediately sees by the look on my face and the solemn look on her father's face as we sat across each other at the kitchen table that I had broken the pact of silence with my girlfriend. And I said, "Can you back me up here?" And she sat down, she told her version of the story, and her father just nodded his head. We sat at the table for maybe 10, 15 seconds, and then all the clocks went off in the house. The gentleman was a clock collector. He had money, 2 doctors in the family. There must have been 20, 30, 40 chime clocks in the house. And they all went off at midnight. He looked at both of us, and then he looked at his daughter, and he said, "Your stepbrother died 7 years ago today." Again, that's a really ham-fisted rendering of a fantastic ghost story. Go back and listen to A Simple Ghost Story. And this happened to me when I was 21 years old. Why do I bring it up? Well, that too was an initiatic experience. That was a byproduct of my meditation, which I had been doing quite diligently for 4 years already. Had I not built up that sensitivity, I would have missed a lot of the key things, like him speaking to me to write the poem, making the connection with the guest registry. These were all guided or influenced behaviors on my part. And what did this initiatic experience teach me? It taught me that we're not nearly as in control of our lives and our thoughts as we would like to think we are. It taught me that the distance between life and death is the thickness of a piece of paper and is brittle and easily punctured. It taught me that circumstances can be orchestrated to create an effect more elaborate than anything that the MI6, CIA, or the Mossad could do. And this was just a normal byproduct of spiritual teaching while in the body. Ergo, it was an initiatic experience. And because I had the realization of the other side, because I had the realization of communicating with the dead. I no longer required faith. I had direct experience. And so the mental and emotional doubts, the blocks, were removed. And subsequent to that experience, 37 years ago, I'm now much more attentive to when the dead are around me. Which, by the way, is not that often. Like maybe once every 10 years or so. It's not like a regular event. And that's the way spiritual unfoldment works. Is you get these experiences that are structured for you because you have supplicated to your higher self, whatever you want to call it. And you've asked to be taught, you've asked to grow. And so the living membrane begins to speak to you because you, through your practice, through your meditation, have expressed a desire to communicate with the living membranes. And they will therefore communicate back to you. But you won't believe what I'm telling you. You won't really understand what I'm telling you, like the 8-year-old who can understand puberty until you go through the experience and you have the blocks stripped away from you. What do you think happens to a person who has an experience like that at 21? Well, it's life-altering, but that's just 1 in 500 life-altering experiences that I've had in persisting in my disciplines. I don't want to give you the idea that these things happen all the time. Many times meditation can be, it's not boring per se, but perfunctory. Great word. Let me look that up for you. I got to make a point of looking up at least one word a podcast because I know people come here to expand their vocabulary. Perfunctory definition. It's an adjective of an action or gesture carried out with a minimum of effort or reflection. That's not my contribution to the meditation, but it's the living membrane is just silent in some meditations, and you're just sitting there practicing the mental discipline of not running off in your thoughts. So that's an example of an initiatic experience. And then there's different kinds of initiatic experiences. And that one I'd say was astral. Then there's ones that teach you about time. And then there's others that teach you about universal consciousness. And then there's others that show you how the energy of the Creator, which animates all of the membranes, operates and functions and creates a living multidimensional reality that can speak back to you in ways that are literally unfathomable. Beyond shamanism, way beyond ayahuasca and psilocybins, way beyond Terence McKenna. This is normal life for me. And I quietly kept it to myself for, 53, 54 years. You can see it in my fiction. If you get around to reading God as an Economist, you'll see it. Especially if you watch the podcast. And I felt in my life, and I'll pass this advice on to you, that as you do your inner journey, you do your meditation, your quiet time, by all means, don't allow me to dictate the terminology by which you explore life. If you don't want to meditate, don't meditate. Find your own way of practicing the art of stillness of body and mind. Some people can do it gardening. I shit you not. Okay? I know people who have their most profound spiritual experiences gardening. So initiatic experience is a realization that transforms your relationship with reality. Puberty changed the 14-year-old brother's relationship with reality. He went from innocence to seeking experience. I went from not knowing what happens after the body ceases to knowing, not believing, knowing we carry on. Now, there are religious teachings out there. One of them just elected a new leader who I'm pretty sure is a pedophile. And they wear dresses and they live in an ancient chapel in Rome. Maybe you can guess who I'm talking about. They tell you that this is not what Bruce thinks it is. That Bruce was tricked by a demon. It is true that demons do trick this way. It is true that when you enter into the occult, you're entering into a world in which demons have a certain free rein by the law of God to play with you. But it comes down to intent. My intent has always been growth. It has always been to feel the love of the Creator, which is gratitude for life. And therefore my experience was real. Reinforced by the timing of it all with the clocks chiming. So the boy fuckers are lying to you because they don't want you to grow in consciousness. Because you're easy to control when you're stupid and you believe in an eternal hell. And it's easy to get money from people like that. That's why the Catholic Church is one of the 5 richest institutions in the world. Disgusting people. My birth religion, my culture. Disgusting. And the true definition of evil is the conscious suppression of growth in another. Deliberately telling lies. This is not to say that every priest is practicing evil, but by not questioning the dogma and doctrine of the church and proselytizing it to congregants, they become co-conspirators in the evil at the center of this institution. We're in an initiation now. All of us. These new age whack jobs call it 5D. Whatever that means. I have no idea. I could put together an answer for you if I really wanted to, but I cannot be bothered. The traditionalists are telling us it's the end of this epoch and the world is going to be destroyed. Like my neighbor across the mountain, who is a nice enough fellow, but I believe wrong on this. Now I'm going to close with this. One second. The monkey orchid, also known as Dracula simia, is native to the cloud forests of Central and South America, particularly in Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia. Monkey orchids thrive in cool, moist, humid conditions at high altitudes. They are epiphytic, meaning they grow in the crotches of trees, or terrestrial, meaning they grow in humus-rich soils on forest floors. They get most of their nutrients from detritus and moisture from the air. The flowers smell like ripe oranges. In the misty cloud forests, the orchid monkey surprises explorers with its blooming flower with a face complete with haunted eyes and nose. This surreal nature creation seems to look back, blurring the line between plant and animal into a mesmerizing botanical illusion. How cool is that? We're in an initiatic phase now. Reality, the membranes speak to us all the time. There's nothing special about a picture picked up by a quantum computer chip at the edge of the solar system. Why go all the way out there to experience something you can experience right here? It's just nonsense. I'm going to call this podcast Innocence and Experience. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.